we're going to be able to experience the kind of transformation. And this is really going to be digging into some very practical things that we can do. And each week, and I'm going to hand some out today at the end of the service, I'm going to be giving you basically some exercises to take home with you to do each day. And as I told you a few weeks ago, how important it is to commit to the time. And even though it's very minimal amount of time, the amount of transformative results that you will see in your life, especially if you will stick to it and commit to it. And you will begin to see probably results in your life in the next 90 days in transformation in your life, in your walk with God, like you've probably not seen most of your Christian life. Because there are things that God has incorporated and built into us as human beings, and ways in which He chooses to work and has designed us to work. And some of these we've talked a little bit about the last several months. We're going to go into deeper detail about some of these things and talking about how we can become Christ-like, and the process that we are able to go through and that God walks us through in order to achieve that. So in Ephesians 4, Paul is talking to the church at Ephesus, and verse 17, he says, "Therefore, I say and testify in the Lord that you should no longer walk on the rest, or as the rest of the Gentiles also walk in the futility of their," what does he say there? Their mind, their thinking. Again, it affects the way you live, how you think, what you're thinking about, where your attention's at. And he's telling them that you guys, as followers of Jesus, no longer conduct your life the same way as the Gentiles. It's simply meaning when he says Gentiles, he's saying people who've yet to come to an experience of Christ. They're living like life outside of Jesus. They're trying to find life outside of Jesus. And you're to be different. They're walking according to a certain way because their mind is thinking a certain way. You walk a different way because your mind needs to be thinking in a different way. He says they're darkened in their understanding. The mind is dark, and it's cut off from God's life because of their ignorance. Where is ignorance at? In the mind. And because of the hardening of their hearts. Their conscience has become hardened now. That inner part of them is hardened because they don't know the truth. They're not walking in the light, they're walking in darkness. And having become hardened, such peoples give themselves up to lust, pursuing what is impure with greed. Where you have your attention and what you're thinking about is going to cause the direction of your life. The practices that you engage in, the things that you do and the things that you don't do. And he says this is a result of them having a darkened mind and living according to that mind. It's leading them into a lifestyle that is contrary to God's best for them. But then he says this, verse 20, "But you did not learn Christ that way." Where do you learn at? You learn in your mind. You didn't receive the truth there about Jesus. In fact, if in fact you heard Him and were taught in Him, since truth is in Jesus. You were taught to put away the old self, which belongs to your former way of life, since it becomes ever more corrupt after the lusts of deceit. Put off what you were. Throw it off. It's like he's using a term, like an old, useless garment that's no longer of any value to you anymore. In fact, it's a garment that doesn't fit you anymore. The size is wrong now. It just won't work anymore because, again, you're different now. Throw that old way of life off. And he says that you are to be renewed in the spirit of your mind. Changed the way you're thinking. And put on the new self, who in the likeness of God has been created in righteousness, holiness, and truth. What he's saying there is when you put on the new self, basically he's saying you've thrown off this old garments that don't fit you anymore. They don't belong to you anymore. They're not who you are. They were controlled by and they were expressions of how you thought. Now you are a new person and you think different. As a result of thinking differently, you've put on new clothing. Clothing now that expresses the way you're thinking. Your mind has been changed now. And as a result, you're putting on who you truly are. You're experiencing your real identity. Your true identity in Jesus. This is the person that you are now in Christ. Even though it seems so wonderful to even be able to comprehend, or so contrary to what you've always known about yourself, now you've entered experientially into this relationship, and Jesus now is showing you that you are the mirror image of Him. That you're one with Him now. You're the expression of Him in this world. And He says, you put all that on, and He says, your decadent speech to come out of your mouth, but only what's good to build up as is needed, in a way that gives grace to those who hear. Don't grieve the Holy Spirit, by which you were sealed in the day of redemption. And then let all bitterness, wrath, anger, shouting, slander be put away from you, along with all evil thoughts, and be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving each other, just as God also forgave us in Christ. So see what He's done? He's saying, now you had an old way of thinking that resulted in certain actions and attitudes in your life. You put that off. Now you've got something new. Your mind's been changed. You're thinking differently. You've put something new on. And that new way of thinking that is expressed now because you're in Christ now needs to be manifesting itself in practical ways in your life and how you treat other people. How you see yourself. The things that come out of your mouth. The attitudes that you take on every day. All of those should be different, but it all starts with your mind. How you're thinking and what you're thinking about, where your attention is at. And I'll show you this video to show you how quickly your mind can change and determine your perception of the world around you. So let's throw that up there real quick. Now, which way is that? You think about, look at that. Which way is that car going? Some see it's going this way. Now think about it. It'll change directions on you, won't it? Now see, for a little bit you might have seen it going this way, and then in a minute you saw it going the other way. Do you see how quickly your mind changed the direction of that? Now what's reality? Reality is what you were perceiving it to be. What you were believing it to be. Your mind was able to change that quickly in perception. The same thing is true in your life as you live it each day. When you change the way you think, you can change the direction of your life. That quickly. It just has to do with where your focus is at. And even if you noticed on that video, there were certain points on that train that if you focused on it, it went one way. If you shifted your focus to the other end, it was going a different direction. Where your focus was at. And it determined the direction that you were seeing it go in. And the person next to you was seeing it going in a completely different way because where their focus was at. Where your focus and where you give your mind's attention to is going to affect how you perceive yourself, how you perceive life, how you perceive God, and everything around you. So we're going to spend, like I said, 6 or 7 weeks talking about this, and I want to encourage you, how do you get the best out of it? How are you going to get the most out of it in your own personal life? One of the things that I encourage you to do is that when we come together, you come with a very clear, hungry mind. You come desiring to want to be experiencing transformation in your life. That you want that more than anything else. To be willing to drop what your preconceived ideas are about what you think you know. What you think reality is. Be willing to drop those things and how you believe your life is shaped and put those things aside and be willing to say, God, I want you to teach me. I want to be different. I want to experience transformation in my life. That's one thing. But the second thing is this, as I said a while ago, be prepared to commit yourself to do the work outside of our gathering. That's where the transformation is going to really happen. It's not going to happen in here in 45 minutes on Sunday morning. You'll get information, but if you don't do anything with the information, it's not going to result in transformation in your personal life. You have to do something with it, just as Paul was telling these people. Do these things. practice these things. It's just as the disciples watched Jesus as they walked with him and they saw him incorporating certain things into his life, and he was modeling things to them for them to do. It wasn't just enough to hear him. He wanted them to be as James would ultimately write, a doer of the word and not just a hearer only. Because remember, James said, if you're just a hearer and not a doer, you're just like somebody that looks in a mirror, you see yourself, and then you walk away, and after a while you forget what you look like because you're simply seeing a reflection. You get some information, but you don't do anything with it, and then you forget it and it's gone. You need to be a doer, so you need to commit yourself to the work and the exercises. And as I told you a few weeks ago, 20 minutes a day, for the most part, is what this will take. And it doesn't mean that you've got to have 20 consecutive minutes. It might be 5-minute increment here, a 5-minute place here, a 5-minute spot there. If you can't find 5 minutes here or there for you to have your life change, something's wrong. But you can sit in front of a television screen and watch news, programming, sometimes for hours on end, that's not going to do anything positive for you. It's not going to change your life in any way. It's just entertainment to pass time. But you're not willing to give yourself 20 minutes a day to change the whole course of your life? So be willing and be committed to do the work in order to get the most out of it. Now, as we talked about in the past, we have to recognize that we live in two worlds. We live in a world where we have an outer world, the world that's all around us of events and circumstances and situations that are all around us. And we also live in an inner world. We have an inner world. And that inner world is the world of our thoughts, the world of our consciousness, the world of our reactions. That's on the inside. And we have a world that is all around us on the outside. Now, things happen to us every day in the outer world around us. As I said, there's circumstances, there's events and situations that we encounter, and they happen to us each and every day. But we react to those situations, circumstances, and events in the inner world. We react and respond to those things that are happening around us on the inside. And you see, so much of our lives are spent reinforcing what's being told to us by the outer world. We're simply reacting to those events and those situations and circumstances. Rather than being proactive, we live our lives reacting, and we let the things in the outer world dictate how we live. And what happens is, when you live reacting, your personal power to live your life each day and walking with God is stripped away from you. Now it's not you walking. It is something else, situations, events, circumstances, other people that you are allowing to control how you live. You have been stripped of your personal power to live your life the way you believe God has called you to live it, because you've yielded it over to other things and to other people. And we spend most of our lives living in reaction to that. Now, both those worlds, as we've talked about in the past, have laws. There are principles and truths and dynamics that control the realities there. Think about this. If you look out here right now, do you see confidence anywhere? If you look in this room right now, can you find fear anywhere? Can you find worry? No. You know why? Because those things don't exist in the outer world. They're not out there. Those things exist in the inner world, not in the outer world. There's no confidence, there's no fear, there's no worry, there's none of those things out here. It's all taking place on the inside. And what happens when we spend our lives living in reaction to everything that's happening in the outer world, we really begin to live in an illusion, almost a make-believe type life. It's not what God's reality is for us. We're living according to something that's just not true. Just as Paul was saying, these Gentiles, the way they were living, they were not living God's best for them. And you now, as believers, have put on this new mind and put on these new garments. You don't need to live that way anymore, because that's illusion. That's not reality for you anymore. It's make-believe. Even though you're experiencing it, it's not God's truth for you. You're living according to deception. And what most people do is they live in this illusion and they get hypnotized by this outer world. They get entranced by it and they think, and again, their perceptions are dictated by this outer world and what they're focused on and what they're looking at. And if they're not looking at truth and they're not looking at God and they're not looking at the reality of what God says about them and how they can live their lives, but they're looking at the reality that's being fed to them by this outer world, they're living in a place that's less than God's best and not living in His reality for them. Here's a principle you need to remember. You don't ever need to forget. The fact of this is that we think whatever thoughts we choose. Nobody can make you think anything. We think whatever thoughts we choose. Can't blame anybody else. We can't even blame the events or circumstances or situations that are happening outside in the outside world. We're making a choice to respond to these things. I was with somebody this week, someone very close to us, and we spent a little time with them. And before we got ready to leave being with them, they made a statement to me, or I said something to them. They made a statement in response back to me that was stupid. Completely contrary to what I just said to them. And I didn't catch myself. It flew out of my mouth before I realized it. I looked at them and I said, that is just stupid. I said, that's stupid. Why would you even say that? Because it's not reality. And we spend most of our lives, again, living in a place that's not reality. But this person is in the place where they're at in their life, dealing with very deep depression, had been on depression medication in the past. But this person, they've gotten off their depression medication, and looking back at that individual's life, there was a point in time in their life where they made a choice to perceive the world around them to be a certain way and to perceive life to be a certain way, and it was a very negative choice that they made. They chose that. That choice then led them into a downward spiral where now their life and every perception that they have in their life, it's always the glass is half empty. Nothing is ever positive. Nothing is ever good. Nothing is ever right. Everybody's against them. Everybody hates them. Nobody loves them. It's just that way. But it started with a choice. And the choice that they made, as we talked about several weeks ago, has affected their physical body. It's racked their physical body with health issues. The person's eaten up with bitterness. The person's eaten up with anger, resentment, unhappy. It's the kind of person you don't want to spend 5 minutes around, because you can literally feel the negativity just oozing out of them. And as a result, they make stupid statements of things that aren't true, because that's how that's their perception of reality. We choose to think the thoughts we choose, and those thoughts that we choose to think about have an effect on our life. They have an impact on the way that we live. Everything's governed by laws, as I said. And we have to realize, and here's the thing, and it's even with this individual, we look at this issue of God's sovereignty, and so many people have taken it to one extreme that say, God's planned everything out in your life. You have no choice in it. You just got to get with the program and follow His plan. And it's all already set in stone. There are certain things that God has ordained that are going to be. One, clearly, is that we're going to be conformed to the image of Jesus. Period. That's going to happen. But the process of how we get there, He leaves an awful lot up to us and our cooperation with Him and His Spirit. He has given us a lot of latitude and a lot of liberty. God doesn't want robots. God does not want mannequins. God does not want a bunch of yes men. God wants people who freely, willfully, lovingly choose to walk with Him. And He's designed us to learn how to do that. And He wants us to do that. And the result of that is like one, I think Robert Capon said this, that there are things that God has set up, the universe to set it up in a certain way to work. Laws and principles. And then he's kind of stepped back a little bit and he said, okay, go for it. Human race, live your lives. There's all kinds of potentials and possibilities out there. Every once in a while, Capon says, God will stick his finger in the pie to do a little something. But for the most part, he lets things play out, knowing all possibilities and potentials of all of our choices and how we'll respond and how he can respond to help us in grace. But a lot is left up to us. And here's the thing that we don't like to realize, that we and our lives are the cause of so much of what happens to us. We're not always the cause of everything that happens to us, but the way that we think and how we perceive the world and the world around us, we a lot of times bring things upon ourselves or engage in things that bring results into our lives. God has nothing to do with it. It's not that he can't work wonderful good out of the negatives and bad, because he can, and he will. But the fact is that we have to take responsibility that so much of what happens to us, we're the cause of it. And the reason why we're the cause of it is because of the way we think. And the way we've been taught to think and the way we perceive our lives. It's like one person said, that we become the creators of the things going on in our lives. We are the accumulation of every thought, every event, every circumstance and reaction. And all of these things within us have created a vibration of energy, which we've talked about in the past. Remember, we talked about as humans, we are energy. That's the way God designed us. And energy has a vibration to it. It has a frequency to it. And when we're living in a positive, spiritual, spirit-filled way, that vibration level is high in us. There is a resonance coming out from us that is wonderful and glorious. But when we're not living in God's best, and sin and the impact that sin has on us, it lowers that vibration. And it has a physical impact. And again, just as I was talking about this individual, getting around them, the vibration, as we all use that term, the vibes they're putting out are negative, they're down. You feel those things. And you know this. All of us in here know that. We feel it. We feel that energy that's coming off of them as not something good. It's very negative and not positive. In fact, our vibration really is creating our reality, because our vibration is a result of the way that we're thinking and how we are perceiving ourselves and life and what's happening to us. And life will respond to us according to our vibration of energy that we're putting out. That's the way God has intended it to work. Just when we talked about vibration of energy that Jesus put out. He was the vibration of God and love. And love was coming out of him. And what was the reality that was coming out of that? The reality was that people that needed to be loved, people that needed to be healed, people that needed to be touched were attracted to him. People that needed grace, people that needed mercy, they were attracted. It was controlling the vibration that he was giving out of his life, and the energy that was pouring out of him was determining the reality that he was living every single day. And not only of his life and what the impact it was having on others, but his relationship with his Father as a human being. It was very wonderful and positive because he saw himself the way Father saw him. And it was creating the reality that he was living in. And your life and my life will respond to us according to that vibration of energy that you and I are putting out. And it's all dictated by how we think. Doesn't matter whether it's circumstances, whether they're events. There are things that will be drawn to us, things that will come to us, people that will come to us, situations that we will be engaged in. That will be, if we're thinking properly and with a very positive way of looking at it. And this isn't positive thinking. Again, it's just trying to get yourself to, think positively, even though there's a partial truth to that. It has something deeper to do with the core of who you are and how you perceive things. That there's going to be an attraction just the same way as if you've got negative stuff that you're thinking about, you start drawing and attracting negative things in your life. Or if they're not negative, you still perceive them as being that way. Because your attention, just like that train, is on an area that you're seeing everything through a dark lens. So then everything that happens to you in your life, you're perceiving it as something bad and something negative. As you change the way that you think, you will change the inner you. If you want to say the vibration of you, what you're putting out, when you change the way you think, you can change that frequency. You can raise it up, and you can raise it up very quickly into a very positive way that it have a positive effect upon your life and the lives of other people. You see, we don't like to accept the fact that we're responsible. We like to blame other people. We like to blame events. We like to blame situations and circumstances. We don't want to take responsibility for our life. We want to blame God. Why did you let this happen to me? God didn't have anything to do with it. But we look at God and say, God, you did this to me. We see this bad thing. God did not do that, but that's the way we perceive it. But you see, once you accept the fact that you think about what you want to think about and that you're the one that's creating your reality under God's grace by the work of the Spirit in you, that you're doing this, it gives you great power in your life. The power now is taken back by you. Now you have the power to realize I can change the direction and course of my life. I can take hold of it and I can live differently. I can be different. I can be a different person. Rather than believing the lie that all that out there is dictating it, which you yielded to it, now you've taken it back and you realize you have the power to do this. Just as Paul said, you put off one garment, you put that garment on. You do it. God's not going to force it on you. God's not going to make you wear it. You ever try when kids were little to put something on they didn't want to wear? How squirmy and all that kind of stuff they got, and they were kicking and screaming a lot of times. They didn't want to wear it. But you were trying, and you finally forced them on. And how happy were they when you finally got it on them? Especially if you were going to take them a picture. Not real happy. God is not going to force the clothing on you. He said, I want you to put it on. Garment's laid out there for you. You're designed to wear it now. So you got to pick it up, take it off the hanger, put it on. It is your choice, and that gives you great, great power. As we go through the next several weeks, we're going to talk about things that's going to challenge your perception of reality, of how you've perceived reality to be in your life, maybe up to this point. And see, many times the truth of our life is different from our experience of it. We may have experienced certain things in our lives, but we've experienced certain things in our lives that are based upon something that's not true. And the truth about who you really are now and who God has made you and the Christ who dwells within you changes all of that completely. And when we start thinking about our minds, one of the things that we have to realize, just as you've been sitting here, we think thoughts constantly, even when we're not aware of it. We're thinking. Constantly, we're thinking thoughts, even when we are not aware of it. Now remember, we went over a few weeks back the 6 laws that we talked about in the mind. Let's just throw those back up real quick, just to refresh, because this is going to be important in the coming weeks. Number 1, thoughts are real forces. Every thought's a force and energy and is having an effect in your life. Thoughts are forces. They have an impact. A force is something that makes an impact. It can do something. And a thought is a real force, and it affects your life. The law of transmission, the mind is a sending and receiving station of thought. Constantly sending thoughts out, receiving thoughts, sending and receiving. Law of attraction, the thoughts that are emotionalized become magnetized and attract like and similar thoughts. Then when you give a thought expressive, you express it in an emotional way, you say it, you think it, and you have feeling with it, and you begin to engage in that, then it's going to attract and pull things that are just like it into your mind. If it's positive, positive things. If it's negative, negative things. The law of control, we're experiencing thoughts all the time, but we have the power and the ability to either entertain those thoughts or dismiss them. Notice, we have the power to do this. We have the power. This is when Paul would talk about things like, I can do all things through Christ. Notice the context that was said in. It was said in the fact of him perceiving his reality of having a lot, having a little, about being content or discontent. Perception. I can control the way I think, but now I've got supercharged ability to do it because I'm doing it through the energy that Christ supplies me now with. I can do all things through him. We have the power to either entertain thoughts or dismiss them. Then the law of insertion. We have the power and the ability to insert any thought of any type into our minds. We can put them in, we can take them out. Then the law of connection. The inner and the outer worlds, they are connected, just as we talked about a little while ago. So everything runs according to laws in this universe, whether, as we talked about, the law of gravity, the physical laws of God, spiritual realities and truths, all those things. And the same thing is true for the mind. Now, what about your conscious mind that's constantly thinking thoughts all of the time? Remember when we did the little description of the brain up here, and we talked about that part of your brain called the neocortex, basically where all of your thinking and all of those little neural connections are being made, all the events, all the experiences of your life, boom, they're recorded there. Everything is there on file. Your conscious mind. What about your conscious mind? One of the things that you have to realize, that if you're going to consider yourself a wise person, that wisdom starts by realizing how much you don't know. You get real wise when you realize, I don't know it all. I hadn't got it all figured out. In fact, there's an awful lot I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. You begin to be a wise person, because then you're put in a position to begin to be willing to learn. This conscious mind that we've got, that God has created us, has three features about it. One is that it is always in constant motion. Always in constant motion. It is always thinking thoughts. I mean, if you sat and observed the thoughts that you've had in the last 15 minutes that you've been sitting here. Some of you have raced around the world. Some of you have raced over Sunday dinner. Some of you have raced over what you're going to be doing later today. Some of you have raced over events that took place 5 years ago. Some of you, your mind is just being thoughts going all the time. Your conscious mind is constantly thinking, even when you're sleeping. It's just boom, 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 full of activity. The second thing about your constant mind is that someone has said it is the great trickster. It can be a deceiver. The thing about your conscious mind is it likes to fool us, it likes to limit us, and it likes to trick us. And you say, what do you mean my conscious mind likes to fool me, limit me, or to trick me? You see, your conscious mind knows all the secrets about you. It knows your strengths and it knows your weaknesses. It knows all of those things about you, and it will play with you. For example, you get up in the morning and your conscious mind says, guess what's going to happen to you today? And then you begin to have all these negative things to start to play up there in that playground. This is going to take place. If that happens, then this is going to happen. Then this is going to happen. And it all goes in spiraling downward, downward, downward. And before you even get out of the house, you're in a depressed state. And living in fear. Because your mind has played this trick on you now. Guess what's going to happen to you today? You see, you can't always believe what your mind tells you. Just like that train. It was going in a certain direction. But your mind might have been telling you it was going in a different direction when in reality it wasn't. You can't always believe what your mind tells you. Because your mind may tell you something wrong. You see, you don't always have to believe what your mind tells you. You're able and free to doubt your own doubts. Because your mind, your conscious mind, is not you. It's a tool. It's a vehicle that God uses and that God works through and that God has given us, but it is not you. So understand that. Your mind can play tricks on you. We always have used that statement. Your mind is constantly thinking thoughts all of the time. And the third thing is there is a lot of useless thoughts that go on in your conscious mind. Thoughts that do you absolutely no good and have no value whatsoever to you. Period. Things like worry, fear, anxiety. All those negative things. And as we've talked about in the past, when you look at the psychological studies, how the majority of human beings spend 60 to 75% or more of their life thinking on negative things. It's useless thought. It's no good to you. it is only destructive and damaging to you. You see, in so many ways, you and I have lost control of this wonderful thing that God has given us. We've lost control of it. We've simply abdicated control of it to that outer world or to other people or to something else. We just simply yielded it over. Whether it's through neglect or whatever, our conscious mind has fallen into disrepair. Sin has caused that. Producing darkness that led to ways of life that were contrary to God's best, as Paul said in Ephesians 4. It's fallen into disrepair. It's fallen into misuse and abuse. And it's time for you to take it back. It's time for you to do what Paul said in 2 Corinthians 10, 4 and 5. To begin to deal with the strongholds that are there. To begin to deal with the fortresses that are there. Ways of thinking that are contrary to God's reality. And tear those things down. You have to take the initiative. As I said so many times, negative thoughts take the vast majority of somebody's life. You see, here's the thing about your conscious mind. Your conscious mind doesn't care one bit whether you're thinking constructive thoughts or destructive thoughts. Doesn't care. It's neutral. Doesn't care one bit whether you're thinking something positive or whether you're thinking something negative, constructive or destructive. I'm not my mind. You're not your mind. But your mind and my mind does affect us. And how we live every single day. And we've got to learn, just like with a garden, how to cultivate this and deal with it. Now, how do you deal with a negative thought? When a negative thought comes into your mind, I'll give you 4 little practical little things just that you can do. When you recognize, and here's the thing, you begin to focus and realize what you're thinking about, and you recognize a thought when it comes in. Most of the time, again, we're not paying attention. We're just living out in la-la land. We've just sort of thrown it into the hypnotic zone, basically, and we're just going through life. But when you start taking control and you begin to realize and focus and realize, what am I really thinking about throughout the day? When you recognize the negative thought, how do you deal with it? Well, one of the techniques is this, is you just simply, it's called the cutoff technique. You just cut it off. You stop it. Remember, you choose to think about what you're going to think about. So just simply cut it off. And what do? Cut that negative thought off and insert a different thought for it. Destructive thought, but you recognize that and you call it what it is. What do you do? How do you know something is a sin? God's labeled it as such, right? You call it that. Same thing with your thoughts. Label that thought. That thought comes through your mind. Oh, I'm a terrible person. That's a negative thought. I don't like that. That's negative. It is not good. And you see, the only time negative thoughts have power over you is when you react to them. And when they get control of us, you know what they do? They're like little vampires, emotional vampires. They suck energy from us. They suck physical energy. They suck emotional energy. They suck spiritual energy from us. So label it for what it is. Third thing you can do is exaggerate the thought. Just exaggerate it. Let it go. Just exaggerate it to the thought of ridiculousness. Just think, for example, you get up and you've got a need in your life and the thought comes, what if God doesn't meet my need? You can cut it off and say that's not true because God says. You can label it, that's a negative thought. Don't want that in my life. Or you can exaggerate it. Yeah, what if God doesn't meet my need? You know what? If God doesn't meet my need, I am going to lose my car. I'm going to lose my house. In fact, everything in my life will be lost. Everybody, they're going to come and take all my clothing. They're going to empty my refrigerator out. I'm going to be out on the street. I'll be living in a cave somewhere. Just take it and exaggerate it to the nth degree until it looks absolutely like what it is. A stupid thought. Because that's what it is. Just exaggerate it. Because it's not reality. And then the fourth thing you can do is just counteract the negative with the exact opposite of it. God's not going to meet my need. What's the opposite of that? God is going to meet my need. God is. Just counteract it with the opposite of it. Just like I said, negative thoughts are like weeds growing in a garden. If you want your garden to grow healthy, you got to do what with the weeds? Get them out. You got to go in there individually and take those things out. Same thing with negative thoughts in our head. You've got to address that and begin to pull those things out of your mind. There's two things we'll be doing in the next few weeks. One is the whole idea of concentrating on things and contemplating things. And we've talked about when we were doing our Wednesday night study on spiritual principles and disciplines and practices in our lives on contemplation. But two things that we need to learn how to do is concentrate and contemplate. Concentrating on something says, I'm focusing my attention. I am focusing my attention on a thought. I'm focusing it on an idea. I'm focusing it on a law. And I'm thinking about it. It's kind of like a magnifying glass. I've got that magnifying glass and I'm expanding that. So I'm concentrating on it. When I contemplate something, I'm disciplining my mind to think about it. And I'm taking it like a gem and I'm looking at it in different ways. I'm taking a truth or a reality. I'm saying, oh, okay, let me think about it like this. Well, what does that show me here? And then I turn it this way and I realize, oh, wow, there's a different angle to this over here. Because I'm giving concentrated time of concentration onto a particular thought or reality, and I'm contemplating. And I begin to think of what does it mean? What are the implications for it for me in my life? I begin to look at the practical aspects of it when I'm contemplating. You see, when I'm contemplating something, I'm getting deeper insight into it. I'm digging below the surface to see what's there. And you see, all those laws even that we had, there's a lot of different levels to them. You take one and you begin to contemplate and begin to think about the implications of it and the ramifications of it in your life. And you begin to go deeper and deeper and deeper. You see, you can know something intellectually, but knowing something experientially is a world apart from that. A world apart from that. And what we want to do is experience things. We can't forget as we go through this, our thoughts are real forces. They have an impact. They impact the way I see myself. They impact the way I see God. They impact the way I see you. The way I see people. The way I see everything that happens in my life has to do with the way I'm thinking. Now think about this and ask yourself this question this morning. What are your thoughts creating in your life right now? Look at your life. What does the garden of your life look like? Is it healthy? Is it strong? Is it vibrant? Is it fruitful? Or has it got a lot of weeds in it? Is it scant looking? Is it dried up looking? What are your thoughts creating in your life right now? What are your thoughts attracting in your life? What do you perceive being attracted to you right now? Positive things, good things, spiritual things, or negative things? See, your thoughts have the power to shape your destiny as well as the lives of other people. And they impact every single relationship that you have in this world, either positively or negatively. And you need to remember this. Your mind, your conscious mind, will act like a spoiled child when you start trying to take control of it. It doesn't like it. Remember, as we talked about how your brain concocts those chemicals and your body then begins to take on certain feelings and emotions because that little bartender in the middle part of your brain's created chemicals to match what you're thinking. And all of a sudden you start trying to change the way you think, but your body's been conditioned to feel a certain way. And now all of a sudden you start to change the way you think and your body says, we like feeling the way we've been feeling. Don't change it. It will be just like a spoiled child. It'll try to do what it wants to do when you start trying to change it. Most people are mentally out of shape. But we're going to be going to the gym. And we're going to be lifting. And we're going to be exercising. And we're going to be working on getting our minds back into shape. Kenny, if you and Robert would pass those out and give these to you and we'll close. I want to give these to you to take home. This will be for the next week. Each day. Like I said, on this week it's 20 minutes. And again, you don't have to do 20 minutes straight. Personally, I like to do it that way because I like to get it done. I like to know that I've done it rather than saying, well, I'll do it here. I'll try to fit it in here because things happen. Kenny had made a copy a while back of the laws. And I don't know if they're back there still available. I hope you got some when he handed. We can create some more. So if you don't have that one, maybe you've written them down, but if you don't, we'll have grace on you. You can skip that one. Try to remember the best that you can. You know what? And remember all this, guys. As you're doing this, you're doing it from a place of grace. You're resting in a place of grace. You're not doing this to try to earn anything from God. It's not going to make you more holy or more righteous or anything. It will help you experience being who you are, holy and righteous. We'll do that, but it's not going to make you more of that. You already are that. It's just we want to help you experience that. So if you only can remember a few of the laws, 1 and 2, everybody got one? So see if it already cut you down 10 minutes. You don't have the laws. But when you do get them, spend some time just contemplating them and just write down. Get you a little notebook or something and write down any thoughts that come to you as you're pondering those laws. And then take one law a day when you get them. You don't already have them. And think about it for 5 minutes. Just ponder it. Discipline your mind if it starts to wander around to get back to thinking about that. Then number 3, contemplation. Spend 5 minutes just contemplating this statement. I am in possession of an amazing instrument of power that is transforming my life now that I'm learning how to use it. Just contemplate that and think about it. Write down any thoughts you may get about it. Then the 4th one. Spend 5 minutes. My personal vibration determines the circumstances and situations that happen to me. My thoughts and my beliefs create my personal vibration. Again, this isn't weird, kooky, wacky old stuff. This is reality. It's science. It's what you're giving off. It's who you are, spiritual, your real energy. And your thoughts create, and your beliefs create that vibration. 5. Self-observation. As you're going throughout the day, suddenly and unexpectedly observe your thoughts throughout the day. Just sometime through the day, just stop and say, what am I thinking about? Catch yourself. Just do it. And see where your mind's at. And take note of it. Weed out the negatives. Whenever you find yourself feeling a negative, use one of those techniques to weed it out. Deal with it when a negative thought comes into your mind. And then if you've had taken any notes, even just from this morning, kind of go over it or think about it, ponder it. But here's the thing, the exercises, do them. Again, if you don't do them, it's not going to do you any good. It's just not. The information is all you're going to have in your head. Until you start putting it into practice, there won't be any change. Period. You've got to put the work in. And right off of this, 10 or 15 minutes if you don't have those laws yet, come on. To have results that'll make a difference in your life for the rest of your life, no matter how long that is. All right, let's pray. Father, thank you for giving us this wonderful, wonderful vehicle called our mind. And thank you that you will be working to change people's minds so that they will change the way they live. and experience you, your grace, and their union with you in greater ways than ever before. In Jesus' name.